A subscriber of mine sent a bunch of these awesome looking charoite stones. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make a pendant with prong settings, and you're only going to be using wire for this whole thing. So let's get started. But like I said, we're going to be using wire for all of this, and I need to make some in all the right sizes. Honestly, this doesn't take that much time if you have all the right tools. And over time will save you a ton of money, seeing that you can recycle scrap from old projects and turn it into new metal again. And for this project, I'm going to be using all recycled sterling silver. I'm using a wire ingot mold so I can get the right shape to actually put it through my rolling mill to stretch it out and turn it into square wire. I do like to put these into an acid bath or pickle to clean them off before rolling them through my mill, and make sure before putting them in the mill that they're completely cleaned of any of the acids or even water, because it will ruin your mill. And if you're not into making your own wire or sheet metal, that's totally fine. You can always buy these in the right size for whatever you're doing. And you can skip to this point in the video if you are not interested in any of the wire making. I did end up rolling out some pretty thin and pretty long wire that is completely work hardened, so I need to anneal it, and the best way to do that is to kind of bundle it up. And this is pretty easy to do. I'm just kind of making a smaller circle and compacting everything down and then wrapping around the edges to keep everything in place. Just try not to do any sharp bends and everything should be fine. When it comes to annealing, you need to use some sort of torch. I like these handheld ones because their gas is very cheap and you can use them for a very long time. I prefer the MAP gas mostly because it puts out way more heat and the torch end is much better. Heating the metals like this will soften them and make them way easier to work with, seeing that when you roll them out, it work hardens them, so you have to soften them. So normally after heating your metals, you'll get some oxidation on them, and the best way to clean this off is just throw it into your pickling solution for a little bit and everything should come out perfectly clean. So here's our stone, and here's the design we're going to be using, along with all the gauges of wire we'll need. We're going to start with the 10 gauge, and start making our basic frame shape using the stone as a guide. Just keep in mind this is on the harder end of stones. If you're using a very soft stone, you can damage it doing this. The entire goal right now is trying to make a piece for the stone to sit in that is about the same shape as it, and the closer the better. This means a lot of bending, testing, and bending again. And this is a thicker wire, so there is a lot of force needed to be put into it, and it can harden over time from just bending it. So you might have to go back and anneal it. So I have it just about to where I want it, but I'm going to overlap the bottom because I'm going to cut it off and make a sharp point here. And there we go. After all of that, it fits my stone really well, and now I just need to cut off the excess. So I actually made a mistake here and cut the wrong side off because I needed the inside to be cut off because we're going to close this up and solder it together. So I had to cut twice. But no big deal. And now with the proper side cut, I can align these so I can get them ready for soldering. I'm going to use some handy flux on the solder joint area and then just evenly heat the piece with my torch before placing my solder with a pick on the solder joint and focusing my heat on that area. With that done, this will go into the pickling solution to be cleaned off. And before I do anything else, I want to make sure that this piece is completely flat. So I'm going to be using my bench block and a rawhide mallet to make sure that the whole thing is level and flat. Using a scribe and a ruler, I'm going to mark out a little guideline so I can cut this into a nice sharp point. I will have to file everything down to make sure everything is nice and uniform before going on to the next step. I need a jump ring for the top, so I'm going to make one using these parallel pliers that happen to be round. And this will just make a simple coil that I can cut out. I'm going to adjust these so they are closed, but they still have a wave in them, so I'm just going to hammer them down using my rawhide mallet. I'm going to mark and cut out this jump ring so it will fit onto our main bezel piece. Whatever shape the cutout is, make sure to test fit it and make sure everything is fitting properly. You can even go over it with a file to make sure that everything is perfectly flush when you solder it. And when it comes to soldering, I'm going to be using handy flux on both joints again and making sure that it's on a perfectly flat surface. I'll be placing the medium solder with a solder pick to the joints on each side and make sure to evenly heat this piece so everything is up to temp. And then just like any time you solder something, it'll go back into the pickling solution to clean off everything. So as we wait for this piece to pickle, it's a perfect time to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. So I thought Skillshare would be a perfect sponsor for my channel, seeing that you come here to learn stuff and Skillshare is a community for learning. And just like my videos, you can learn at your own pace. And one thing I like about it is every class is project oriented, so you're working towards a goal and not just random skills. So you'll actually have something by the end of it. So if you're looking to learn Adobe Illustrator, I suggest taking the Essentials training from Daniel Scott. And if you want to learn Inkscape, which is a free program, I suggest checking out Gaia Marvert. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. This gives you access to the full catalog of all that Skillshare has to offer. So thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. So now I can mark out where the prongs are going to go. I'm just going to make straight lines across in 3 spots. This will make it a lot easier to keep everything in line. And from those basic guidelines, I can mark out straight lines for my prongs so they go straight across the metal instead of having a curve to them. I'm also going to match those lines going along the outside and on the back side of the piece. Using my jeweler saw, I'm going to cut into the piece on the outer lines, just enough that the entire 3/0 saw blade is inside of the piece. These will act as guides for our round diamond burr, and this will make the channel for our prongs. So you might notice that this is a round burr and it's going to leave a round channel, and we're using square wire. So to fix this, we're just going to use the side of a square needle file. This will make it so the prong wire will sit flush inside of here and have no gap, and this will make a perfect solder joint. I'm also going to do this on the top and bottom of the piece. This will allow for the bottom or back prong to be soldered in place and be extremely sturdy. As for the one on the front side, it will allow the prong to lay down in it and look a lot nicer. So it should look something like this. And then I just need to do this to all 6 spots, which already this pendant is looking really nice as it is. Before getting any of the prongs on, I'm going to try to clean this thing up, seeing that once the prongs are on, it's going to be a lot harder to get tools into it. With that done, I can roughly mark out the lengths of the prongs and start bending them. And you always want to make sure your prongs are longer than you need them to be, because it's easier to cut off material than to add it. And all we need to make are these little sharp L's so they line up with everything. Soldering these on are pretty standard. You can use the weight of the piece to actually keep it in place, and the channels will help with that as well. And if it does move around or out of position for any reason, you can move it with your solder pick or some tweezers. I'm going to be using some easy solder on these, because these are going to be the last things we're going to be soldering. And now I just have to solder the rest of them on. So here it is with all the prongs soldered on, and as you can see, our stone fits in here perfectly without falling out, and the back prongs could actually be a lot shorter, so I'm going to cut them down. And there we go, and it looks a lot better now, but they're kind of sharp, so I'm going to use a cup burr to round them out and soften their edges. As you can see, that is much better on the back end now. But there is some extra solder that I need to clean up, so I'm going to do that now. I couldn't decide how I wanted to finish this, so I put out a poll on my channel, and it looks like you guys want it to be a matte and dark finish, so let's do that. I'm just going to take some liver sulfur and mix it into some hot water and leave this in it for about an hour to get it nice and dark. To get the finish that I want, I'm going to throw them into a tumbler with some hone and highlight tumbling medium. This stuff works pretty fast, so it only needs to be in there for about an hour. And here we go, it has that nice worn look I was going for. So now we can finally set our prongs. I'm going to cut them down a little bit because they're way too long, and they will just start overlapping one another, but at the same time not too short so they don't fit properly. You can use a bezel pusher or a prong pusher for this. I'm just going to use a wooden dowel. So all you have to do is bend them down like this and make sure that they're in your channel. Once I have them all down to my liking, I'm going to use some parallel pliers to actually squish them down and set them. If you have some nylon tipped ones, even better, because it will not mar your piece. You might have noticed that every time I set a prong, the stone moves a little bit, so keep this in mind so you can keep your stone centered. So everything's set pretty good. Now I'm going to need to trim these for the last time to their final length. You're going to want to get some clippers like these and get them up against the stone as close as you can and as flat as possible, and cut off the excess prong. Also be careful because these will go flying everywhere, so wear safety glasses. And here we go, this looks much nicer now, and our stone is very secure in here and with no movement whatsoever. I still need to clean up the ends of these prongs though. To do this, I'm going to use a needle file that has smooth sides so I don't risk scratching my stone. And all I'm trying to do is round these out a little bit more so my cup burr will fit over them and it'll do the majority of the work. And when using this, I'm trying not to touch my stone with it and risk scratching the stone at this point. So there we go, everything's all nice and rounded, and all I need to do now is polish out all of the tooling marks from doing all the work to the prongs. And after all of that, here is the finished piece. I actually really like how the entire piece came out, and it's not too complicated to make, so I hope this helps with your future prong settings. If you found this video to be helpful, leave a like. If you have any questions, leave a comment. And subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!